This is big breaking emergency news. An executive order was just signed, and we also have a nationwide alert, a nationwide warning for major attacks on our U.S. critical infrastructure, right? This also comes as right now, multiple states are being hit by these attacks right now. All right, this is happening in live time. Multiple different states, they're having to shut down their systems and take their systems offline. Hospitals, voting systems, all right, all these things are being hit today and are being affected right now as well. All right, so our country is experiencing this. There's also a lot of news coming out from overseas, right? The U.S. has launched a barrage of attacks, and we will talk about that later as well. All right, there's also nationwide phone outages being reported. All right, so all these things are hitting our country. These are happening in coordination, right? There's escalations happening overseas, and then we're also seeing these domestic cyber events taking our critical infrastructure offline and affecting it, right, in multiple different states right now. And there's a nationwide federal alert warning that's being issued as well. All right, so let's get into all this news. Let's get to these few states that are being hit, and then we will get into this executive order that was just signed as well, and then we will get into this nationwide alert. And then we will also talk about what is going on overseas. All right, but you can see here, all right, multiple different states are being hit right now and taking their critical infrastructure offline due to cyber attacks. All right, so this is happening in Tennessee right now. Okay, this is also happening in Georgia, and this is also happening in Texas and Illinois. All right. Multiple different states are taking their critical infrastructure offline because they're experiencing these attacks. All right, and this is part of the warning, the nationwide warning that has also just been issued as well, that we could see big attacks, especially on our water supply. We could see the water shut down, all right, or the water contaminated or poisoned in these local jurisdictions where you get city water to your house. All right, if you have a well, the electricity could go off though. All right, so let's get into these 4 different states, and then we will get to this executive order that was just signed as well, because this is all related. Things are escalating. All right, the border is wide open while this is happening as well, and also our cybersecurity defenses are wide open, and our country is being shut down and systematically being taken offline. Hospitals, voting systems, citywide servers. All right, all these things are being taken offline right now. You can see here just this week, there have been 2 major hospitals inside of Chicago that have taken their systems offline. All right, 2 massive hospitals that are now unable to process people that are coming into the ER. They cannot access their systems. They cannot access the medical records. They cannot email or communicate with any other doctors or internally within the staff, right? This affects medication being delivered. All these things are being affected right now. Surgeries are being shut down because of this massive cyber attack on multiple hospital servers inside of Chicago. And this is exactly what would happen before a SHTF scenario inside the US, is that the hospitals would be taken offline first, so there's no way to respond to the event. All right, this is exactly what would happen. We would have a mass blackout and mass taking offline of our hospitals, so they couldn't communicate with each other and they were incapacitated. All right, but you can see here 2 hospitals just this week, all right, taken offline from cyber attacks. It was Lurie Children's Hospital, one of the biggest children's healthcare organizations in the Midwest, serving 239,000 children each year. On Thursday evening, the hospital reported a recent network outage due to a cyber attack. All right, it says Lurie's Children's Hospital is actively reporting a cybersecurity matter. Quote, "We are taking this very seriously and are investigating with the support of leading experts and are working with law enforcement agencies." They said, quote, "As part of our responses to this matter, we have taken network systems offline. As Illinois' leading provider for pediatric care, our overarching priority is for safety and quality for the patients and the community." Also, St. Anthony's Hospital inside of Chicago as well, they said that external forces, potentially foreign governments, they are even saying, access their internal servers and were able to take them over. All right, this is happening also inside of Texas right now. All right, there is school districts inside of Texas that are reporting a nationwide outage of their phone provider. They're saying that they had to completely install new phones inside of their district, inside of the Beaumont Independent School District in Texas, due to a major cyber attack and a nationwide phone outage of their service provider. All right, we also have in Fulton County, Georgia. All right, very controversial county, right? We've seen a lot of stuff going on there, a lot of news coming out of Fulton, and now some even stranger news. All right, you see here, Fulton County locks down voting systems after cyber attack hits government. All right, quote, "Abundance of caution." You can see here, the weekend cyber attack hit its phones, courts, and tax systems, and they took the voting systems offline to make sure they're not going to be hit. All right, so this is almost just like foreshadowing what could come next. Just very strange. It seems like a foreshadow. Okay, they're taking off the voting systems offline due to a cyber attack in Fulton County, Georgia, right now, preemptively in an election year in 2024. All right, so all this stuff, we're looking at something big to potentially happen in 2024 that could potentially affect things going on in November later this year. All right, let's hope that doesn't happen, but it seems like the narrative is being set up for something to potentially happen. All right, and maybe things have to be suspended, maybe things have to be delayed. Who knows what's going to happen later this year, all right? But it seems like they're potentially setting this narrative up. We also have the FBI is joining investigations into the city of Germantown cyber attack in Tennessee. This is outside of Memphis, Tennessee, Germantown. And they're saying the FBI is helping to track down the people responsible for a cyber attack that caused the city of Germantown systems to be taken offline on Friday. All right, so all these different cities around the country, hospitals, critical services are being hit and taken offline at the same time. And this is a constant barrage, for especially the past year or two. These things have ramped up exponentially. The amount of these attacks on our critical resources and infrastructure has increased tenfold, 100-fold. And this is related to the executive order that was just signed right now and related to these sanctions that were just put in place as well, and this nationwide alert that was just issued by the federal government that our critical infrastructure is not safe, right? You can see here, U.S. imposes sanctions on Iranian officials over cyber attacks on water plants. It says the U.S. has imposed sanctions on 6 officials in Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which says are responsible for cyber attacks on American water plants late last year. All right, so there were multiple dozens of water systems in the U.S. and multiple states that were taken offline due to this massive cyber attack, all at the same time, all within a week of each other. Dozens of systems taken offline. And this was a dry run. This was a dry run for something bigger to happen in the U.S. And we also have a nationwide alert being issued and warning being issued by CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. They are now issuing a new alert by the executive assistant director of the agency. The U.S. Cybersecurity Agency calls America's water systems that residents rely on to drink clean water, quote, target rich and cyber poor. Quote, it's why CISA moves with such urgency, said the agency's executive assistant director for cybersecurity, Eric Goldstein, in an interview with the BBC. He said there could be, quote, a hypothetical scenario where the cyber attacks had life safety impact and affected the potability of water. Quote, Iranian cyber actors continue to mature and invest in their capabilities. China is the pacing threat that the U.S. faces in cyberspace. There is malicious Russian activity, but North Korea and Iran could continue to invest in their capabilities. That is what he told the BBC. All right. So this warning was just issued. All right. This executive order was just signed for these sanctions on Iranian officials. And this comes at the same time that we are seeing escalations and retaliations in this part of the world as well, in the Middle East. Right now, there's a massive bombing campaign going on that just started tonight as well, right? From the U.S. going on inside of Iraq and Syria. Okay, so all these things are related. All these things are related, and we could see these escalations happen inside the U.S. domestically as well. Just because stuff's going on overseas doesn't mean we are safe here anymore. All right, that's not the situation currently, and we could see things escalate inside the U.S. domestically. And if these attacks are successful, and if we see a major retaliation like this, we could see even bigger domestic kinetic warfare launched on the U.S. as well in the aftermath of a major cyber attack, a major blackout, whatever the case that happens, because there would be no way to respond. Right? The U.S. military uses the same systems, the same power companies, and the same water systems that the general public uses. These military bases use all the same resources that we use, and it's a security risk, right? And these things are all connected to the internet. So we also see right now that's happening tonight, right? This is why this warning is urgent and critical, because we could see responses happen, because the U.S. just dropped, quote, 125 bombs on 85 targets linked to, quote, Iran's Revolutionary Guard and devastating airstrikes on Iraq and Syria. All right, that is the article that is coming out tonight. And it says that multiple long-range bombers and drones hit 85 targets with 125 bombs over 30 minutes in the widespread military operation on Friday night ordered by President Biden. It says 2 B-1 bombers flew from the U.S. for the mission, hitting 7 facilities, 3 in Iraq and 4 in Syria, linked to the IRGC and Iran-backed militias. It says the targets included command and intelligence centers and warehouses where missiles and drones were stored. And the thing with this as well is that they gave a major warning before these attacks. Right, so it was broadcasted, these 85 targets, which ones are going to be hit in which regions, all right, so they could deduct which ones they were targeting. There's only so many targets for these facilities and warehouses, and they were able to evacuate and escape these facilities before they were hit. So it really does seem like things are escalating in this region of the world, and we could see retaliations from Iran as well. We could be in this tit for tat where we see a back and forth, and Iran has heavily invested into their drone capabilities and their cyber capabilities as well. Right? That's why they are targeting and sanctioning specific Iranian officials from these attacks on these water plants, water treatment plants, and water facilities last month in December, I guess 2 months ago now in December, right? And while all this is happening, our border is wide open. Our border is not being secured. Our military is also not at our border right now. Okay, our border is open. It's a national security threat. And they are also taking over parts of our country and changing them to potentially bring in a potential military invasion. All right. There's a high probability that even a small percentage of these people that are coming over, even if it's less than 1%, and there are 300,000 that came over in December, this is still a high number of people that are potentially could cause problems. All right. And there was already over 50 people in the past 90 days that were on these international watch lists that entered the country as well. And look at what they're also doing right now. And these people could potentially be activated in a retaliation against the U.S. All right. But look at what's happening inside of our country as well right now. This is coming out of Boston, Massachusetts. Okay, Boston, Massachusetts, where they're building this massive facility. This is going on all over the country, where they're converting and building these major tents, and they're converting children's community centers and rec centers into these giant warehouses to have cots and tents and house thousands of people inside of them. This is happening all over in coordination at the same time. Why is this being allowed to happen? This is happening in Boston, Massachusetts. A children's rec center was taken over, right, and converted into this military barracks, which it kind of looks like. That's almost what it looks like, right? This is happening all over the country. In New York City, cities are building these massive facilities and taking over facilities for this purpose, and it's a national security risk as well. We're not sure exactly who is coming in and who is staying in these tents and in these facilities that are being converted. All right. We also have cities like Denver and cities like New York, right? While all this is going on, selected people are now being given debit cards inside of New York City that have access up to $1,000 per month, right? They're now handing out debit cards, prepaid, or I guess maybe they're credit cards, to quote migrants in New York City with benefits up to $1,000 a month to just spend on whatever they want, right? Prepaid debit cards every month. This is happening inside of New York City. They just launched this. There was already other programs going on. This is a new program, and it's a $53 million program to hand out these cards to specific people. All right, so I want to know who gets it. How do they determine? And potentially this money could be going into very dangerous hands. All right, that is potentially what we are dealing with. And even cities like Denver are also struggling with this as well, right? They are a declared sanctuary city, and they are being overwhelmed and overrun, and even the mayor is saying that their city is struggling, and it's a very grim picture there. I've been to Denver many times, and I haven't been there in a little while, but when I was there are entire areas, especially Boulder, where there's just hundreds of homeless people, right? And it's very sad. It's freezing cold, and people are just sleeping in the park. There's an entire park in Boulder, Colorado, that's just completely, it has hundreds of people just living in the middle of the park, in the middle of city, in this nice little town, Boulder, right outside of Denver, right? Little suburb of Denver. And there's just an entire park that's just overrun. And I'm sure it's even worse now, right? Because there's so many people showing up, and this needs to be stopped at the border, right? We can't just allow this flow to go into all the different states. It needs to be stopped at the source, and these states need to stop supporting it as well, like Colorado. All right, you can see here, this is the picture that they're painting. This is a article from CNN, right? It says Denver nears its breaking point as, quote, migrants and the cold pile in. right? And a lot of these people are not ready for it to be negative 20 degrees and be living outside. It's insane. It's insane what's happening in our country, all right? They also said, quote, "This is what's an overwhelmed city can look like." Quote, "A preschooler sleeping under a bridge for a month." This is insane. "Crowds lining up each night to get food and shelter. And the mayor calling out for help. And when that city is Denver in the winter and the overnight temperatures sink below 0 degrees Fahrenheit, the problems are life-threatening." Quote, "Our city is really struggling," says Mayor Mike Johnston, told CNN after he visited families in a makeshift encampment, a sign of the unfolding emergency triggered by the mass arrivals of people from outside the city. Quote, "This is both a humanitarian crisis for the individuals that are arriving, and it's a fiscal crisis for the cities that are serving. The two crises are coming to a head right now." All right, so that's also what the mayor of Denver is warning. And these mayors know, these governors know, but they won't change anything. They're not changing anything. For some reason, they are still saying that it's wide open. All right, Denver health is collapsing. All right, it was around 8,000 people. It was only around 8,000, quote, migrants that overwhelmed Denver health and their hospital, the largest hospital in Denver, because there was a $130 million deficit just from 8,000 migrants going. It was like 20, 30,000 times. All right. Insane and unsustainable. And it's part of the collapse, and it's part of the setup for our country. All right. This is a known strategy. It's called Cloward and Piven. And it's a strategy to overwhelm our systems internally so the U.S. cannot respond. All right. We're so bogged down internally because it's known as a military strategy that you cannot directly invade the U.S. All right. Most heavily armed population and country in the history of the world. All right. So it's very hard to have a full-scale internal invasion from a foreign country into the U.S. But if it's allowed to happen without anyone stopping it, and then it also overwhelms our systems internally, our social systems, our hospitals. Our hospitals are getting hit with cyber attacks. They're being loaded up with debt, right? All these things. And you can bet that when the power goes out, right? When there's a major cyber attack on the water systems, on the food supply, there's already been multiple major ones. There was a cyber attack on one of the biggest independent food distributors just a few months ago, and truckers were stranded and couldn't even deliver or drop off any of their goods. All right, this went on for a few days, and it totally shut down the biggest independent food supplier, wholesale food provider in the country. All right, we're going to see hits on our pipelines. We're already seeing this, explosions on our pipelines and major attacks on that, on our farms. All right, we saw this chicken farm fire in Texas a few days ago. All these attacks are increasing in frequency, and this is part of the strategy to bring America down from the inside out. This is the only way that it can actually happen, is if it's internally. All right, so make sure you are getting prepared. Make sure you are getting stocked up. Make sure you are starting to grow your own food, getting your garden prepped, getting your garden ready for spring. It's coming. It's now officially February. All right. Spring's going to be here before we know it. And a lot of places you might want to be starting your seeds now early. If you have a greenhouse, if you have a warm place inside that you can keep them, that has some light. All right. You might want to be starting your seeds now to get an early start. Depends on your zoning, your USDA zone. But look at these things. Get started on these things now. Get prepared now. Get a generator. Get your water tanks. Get your gas tanks filled up. All these things are critical. Get some chickens. All right. We're working on our chickens here. We got a new flock. And we also have our girls outside. All right. We got our big garden going. Working on that. It's in the beginning stages. And we're going. All right. 2024 is ready to go. We're going to get our homestead that we just moved on ready and efficient and get these systems moving. All right, we're going to get eggs hatching, get chicks coming in that are our own chicks and producing them, producing meat birds, all these systems producing food for the chicks from the garden, right? Having excess, giving the chicks any of our excess food scraps. These are all the things we're working on. So we have these internal systems, and then we already have a big chicken poop pile to use in the garden, right? Figure out these closed loop systems. You feed the chickens from the garden and feed them your food scraps. They give you manure. You use that in your garden, and you grow more food for yourself and for the chickens, and you get eggs, right? Figure out these systems, these natural systems that you can have set up in case it hits the fan, in case the power goes out, in case the water's down, right? In case because once this stuff happens, people are going to panic buy and the shelves are going to be empty, right? Shelves are going to be empty. This is already happening in countries like Sweden, where they're announcing wars and drafts. They're doing this all over Europe in different countries, Australia, the UK, right? They're announcing forms of conscription, and people are panic buying food, and there are empty shelves happening already. So please hit it up for me down there to help get this video out to more people. Executive order just signed, national alert for more cyber attacks on our critical infrastructure and our water supply as well, right? Because even if you have a well's great. We're on a well out here. Great water. You can drink the water. That's the water we drink. Don't drink any bottled water to stay away from plastics and all these things. But even if you have a well, if the power goes out, that well pump is not going to work. You'll have some pressure from your tank, but the pump is not going to work, right? So have your water tanks filled up, water jugs. We got a big 200-gallon tank. And also, we're trying to figure out a way to get a generator hooked up to our well if we need it. All right, so thank you guys so much, and I hope you have a big old blessed day.